In this video, let us look at resource management. In a organization, there can be many different type of resources. The first thing is budget, the available funds to either to manage a project or manage a team. And another type of resource are number of people, the staff are full-time employees or contractors, so they are resources. And other type of resources are applications. IT has already paid money and bought applications, implemented applications in the company, and they have a purpose to serve the users on a specific scenarios or specific needs. And other resources are assets. Let's say it can be infrastructure, like a network, LAN, WAN, or routers, switches, computers, devices. All those are can be called as our resources, which are part of a assets category. And resources, vendors. Company has built relationships with vendors, have agreements, contracts, and SLAs to get certain kind of a services or products from vendors. So that is also a resource for the organization. And finally, data is a resource available for the company. So the goal here, what we are trying to understand is there are a lot of resources available in the organization. As part of the governance is to ensure all these resources are utilized properly or maximum utilization. So to look at that, how do we get the optimization? So before we see how, let's see what it means by optimization. First thing is you cannot have more than required resources. If a project requires 10 members, 10 people to work on, and if you have 12 members, you are wasting extra 2 members' efforts. Same thing, in other words, if you need one laptop to work, if you ask for 2 laptops, you're wasting the extra resources. So as a leader, you, your job is to ensure the resources what are given are utilized properly. So that means no wastage. At the same time, you cannot have less number of resources. If the project say requires 10 members, you cannot have, let's say, 5 or 6. That means maybe project B won't be successful. So there can be unmet needs. So you cannot have more than needed. At the same time, you cannot have less than needed. Um, at the same time, let's say you have the right number of resources, but you cannot overutilize them. If you overutilize them, you may run into quality and reliability issues. Let's say a project has 10 members, but you're squeezing best out of them or maximum out of them. Or they may try to finish faster if there's no right time available. So there may be quality issues. If you take example of a computer, you have a certain program running and it requires certain resources. But if you run this computer all the time with 100% of CPU, then eventually the lifetime will be reduced for that. So overutilization also causes problems. And same thing, underutilizing. If you have a resource but you're not able to utilize, that means you're failing to use the resources properly. Well, there can be exceptions, and it may be some cases you may want to keep some buffer. Like let's say capacity planning, you don't want to plan with assuming you want to use 100 percentage. You may plan that I want to use 80 percentage and 20 percentage can be the buffer. Well, that can be contingency plans and all those things are there. But in general concept, resource optimization is to maximize the utilization and minimize the cost with obviously acceptable risk range. So now that we have seen resource optimization, so let's see resource life cycle. So generally, let's say this is can be we can take an example of let's say I want to buy a car. So first, for me, I have a need. So I have a need that I need to buy a car. Maybe my current car is end of life, and I have a need identified. And then I'll plan, okay, I need to buy a car. I think I have this budget and I'm interested to buy this car. So maybe with these specifications, I'm interested. So you develop a plan for this. Next thing is you plan to source the car. Source in the sense, identify where you want to go buy. Maybe you'll find a specific dealer or online. So you choose that source and then you acquire. Part of acquisition of the resource or this asset, or in this example car, I have to go to a dealer store and maybe negotiate to get the optimum price for me. So once I buy this car, I have to utilize it. I have to utilize it based on my needs. um, and then while I'm using for my needs, I have to maintain this vehicle. I cannot just keep using it. It needs proper maintenance. Either it's depending on the type of the car, you need to change the oil or change certain kind of parts, so you need to maintain it. So after a while, this resource, in this case car, comes to end of life. Then it may be because a car is not running, or I may want to buy a better car after a certain period of time. So I look for options to replace it or retire this car and replace with another car. So this is general resource life cycle, like from need identification to using it and retiring it and replacing it with something else. So now let's take this life cycle for all our assets or resources what we have identified. So let's start with a budget. Budget is the fund allocated for you because you're running the team or there's a project. So budget has a life cycle and expectations that there is a fund allocated for a specific outcome to run a team or run a project. And at the end of this particular period, and there is some expectation out of the budget. So that is a budget life cycle where you have to prepare a business case, get approved, get funded, use this, and then provide the results. And if you look at people life cycle is, let's say, from a HR aspect, you have to hire, and retain and develop. On Broadway, you can call its life cycle of people processes hire to retire. But when you hire, you need to make sure that they are getting the work what is needed assigned to them, and they have provided the resources so required for them to do their job, and they need to be helped with acquiring right skill set so they can improve their performance to meet the job needs. And depending on the needs, you may promote the people or assign them to a different projects. So that's kind of a people's life cycle. And applications, you have acquired an application based on a need for a company from a specific vendor, and you implemented it, and then the company users are using the application, and you have to ensure that there is a proper user adoption and user training, and while users are using it, those applications needs to be maintained, either upgraded or patched. And after a certain period, you may decide there is a better application or vendor is not supporting this version, so you may have to retire this and replace it with something else. So assets, let's say there is a network infrastructure and you have a need to certain reliable, certain specifications, you acquired it from a vendor, and then you need to maintain it. In this case, you don't want, if something goes wrong, you don't want to repairing by yourself. You may need some vendor support. So you buy some contracts or warranty with vendor companies or partner companies so that you can call them if something goes wrong. So assets have its own different life cycle, and some companies may decide, oh, we don't want to buy these assets, we want to lease them for a specific period because they want to maintain this life cycle easily. If you buy, you may want to keep it for a longer time, but if you lease, there is a fixed time. So there is a buy versus a lease of assets and when to replace them, when to repair them. So you have to consider those criteria. And vendor is also a resource because you have established relationship and contracts and agreements. And if you're not utilizing their services properly, that means the governance and management are not happening. So vendor utilization has to happen, and there is um, certain accountability have to be established to the vendors. So they are providing the expected services as per the service level agreements. And data is very a significant resource for a company. So data utilization has to be optimum because data has its own life cycle. It's like it's created maybe a part of a transactions of let's say customer buying something. So there is an order, data is created. Our data is acquired. Let's say we need customers' data. So we may buy from some other partner these customers' data for our marketing purposes. So data is created or acquired and then stored. And depending on regulations, data have restrictions how long you can keep them. Um, so it has to have a life cycle, and after the certain time period, data has to be disposed in appropriate manner, so you don't run into regulatory issues. So data has a life cycle too. So like this, each of the other resource has its own life cycle. So the point here we're trying to convey is identifying these resources and then understanding that each resource has its own life cycle. Now the question is, how do we ensure these resources are utilized properly? Um, Here are some of the high-level points. One is strategic planning and aligned with the business objectives. Whatever resources we are utilizing or procuring, they have to be aligned with the business objectives and aligned to the strategy of the company. And performance measurements. So these assets or resources needs to have some metrics associated with them to say that whether you're using them properly, either they are financial or non-financial. So there have to be some performance measurements. In case of employees, we all know they may have yearly appraisals and performance bonus factors and project success rate. So there can be metrics there in measuring the individual performance and repeatable processes for proper lifecycle management. So as we have seen, each asset or each resource have a life cycle, and there has to be a process to manage these life cycles. If it is happening not the right way, not matured way, then what happens? There will be broken processes. Sometimes things are broken, then they will be fixed. Some cases, some of the assets are maintained in the right time, or some of them may lose the warranties. So the process has to be established how we are going to take care of these resources and roles with the proper responsibility and accountability. This management, if we buy let's say a big system, and if there is no accountability established, who's the owner for this? If something goes wrong, then there won't be a proper mechanism to ensure that that is taken care. So the roles and responsibilities have to be assigned for these resources, so that way this gets managed. And this is happens especially in data ownership. If the customer's data is there, um, who gets access to this customer's data? Then there's a data owner identified, and data owner decides that whether to these particular users can have access to this customer data. Is it a read access or a write access? So the owner's responsibility to maintain this life cycle. And the last one is enterprise architecture, standards, and frameworks to follow. These resources, these architecture standards will help to ensure how to utilize the resources, how to maximize the benefit of it, and how to make sure that we don't violate and use the resources wrong way. So these frameworks and standards help us. So concluding that resource management is utilizing the resources, uh, the possible maximum benefit out of resources, and producing the value to the company.